My name is Celeste Morgan. I'm 35 years old, a single mother living in Savannah, Georgia, and nothing in my life could have prepared me for the moment I watched my older brother Marcus slap my daughter Ava across the face, just because she was singing during breakfast at a family reunion. She's only 6. She was softly singing, "How Far I'll Go," her favorite song from the animated movie Moana, the one she watches every night before bed. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't screaming, just a gentle, innocent melody, pure, childlike joy. But barely a few notes in, Marcus suddenly stood up, walked over to her and slapped her. The sound cracked through the bright kitchen, like a whip cutting through the scent of pancakes and vanilla candles. Ava froze. The piece of toast with strawberry jam slipped from her hand and fell to the floor with a soft thud. Her little body didn't fight back. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just opened her wide, clear blue eyes, as if trying to understand. What just happened? I froze too. My heart pounded. My eyes burned. I wanted to scream, to lunge at him, to fight back. But in that split second, all I could do was gasp. Marcus returned to his seat cold and calm, like nothing had happened. "Kids need to learn to be quiet at the right time," he said flatly. "Not every place is a stage for their little show." But what crushed me even more was my parents' reaction. My father Victor just shook his head and raised his coffee cup, sipping it like he'd just witnessed someone ruin a perfectly good breakfast. "At least she learned a lesson in discipline," he muttered. My mother Elaine didn't even look at Ava. She just chuckled and said to me, "You used to get the same when you were little. No one died." And in that moment, I saw myself again, at 8 years old, standing in the corner facing the wall as punishment for dropping a plate, while Marcus sat comfortably on the couch, laughing at cartoons. I grew up with favoritism, but today, I saw it repeat itself on the child I brought into this world with every ounce of love I had. I knelt down and gently wrapped Ava in my arms. She trembled, her tiny hands clutching the hem of my shirt. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered. My voice was shaky, but I knew she needed those words more than anything right now. Then I remembered the camera. Jordan, my cousin's husband, had been filming a documentary on white Southern family legacies. A small camera had been set up in the corner of the kitchen. The mic was still recording. The slap, the blaming, my mother's laughter, all of it captured. I turned to Jordan. He looked at me, guilt all over his face, and gave a small nod. Just one nod, but it sparked something in me I hadn't been able to hold on to for 35 years. Courage. I stood up, holding Ava close to my chest. No one stopped me. No one said a word, because they knew, and they chose silence. "We're leaving," I said firm and clear, and I walked out of the house I once grew up in, once called home. A place built on excuses for cruelty, where silence in the face of violence was called family tradition. But this time I wasn't running away. I left with my daughter, and with proof. And I swore no one would lay a hand on my child without facing the consequences. I used to think I was used to being ignored. But when I saw Ava standing frozen after that slap, her eyes scanning the room for someone to help, and no one did, I realized something my old wounds had never truly healed. They'd just been buried under time and quiet endurance. I didn't grow up lacking shelter or food. We lived in Asheville, in a peaceful little town filled with sloped roof homes and neatly trimmed lawns. From the outside, our family was the picture of traditional values: a lawyer dad, a stay-at-home mum, a sporty son, a well-behaved daughter. But inside that 3-story house, I was no one. I wasn't hated outright. I wasn't beaten or constantly scolded. I was just ignored. Every decision in our household revolved around Marcus, my older brother, the golden child. Dinner menus, summer vacations, even what channel we watched on TV. If Marcus wanted it, we all followed. If I spoke up, my dad would say I was overreacting. See, my mum would sigh and say, "Oh, Celeste, don't be selfish." I learned how to stay silent early on, how to eat quickly so no one would ask me questions, how to disappear into corners and become the easy child, because drawing attention only brought pain. Marcus grew up like a little king, confident, arrogant, and never denied a thing. He was smart, athletic, praised by neighbors. In my father's eyes, Marcus was the rightful heir. And me, I was the daughter who should marry soon, settle down, and not burden the family. So that's what I did. At 21, I married Jason, not out of deep love, but because I thought it was the only way to escape that suffocating house. I dreamed of freedom, of a home where I could finally be myself. But that dream shattered quickly when I found out Jason had been cheating. Just as Ava turned 3, I filed for divorce, moved to Savannah with my daughter, and started over. I took a job in internal communications at a hospital. I wasn't wealthy, I wasn't extraordinary, but I had built a decent life with my own hands. And above all, I loved my daughter with everything I once lacked. That's why I couldn't stomach what happened during breakfast. Why it shattered me to watch my family sit there and make excuses after Ava was slapped. Because I saw myself in her. I saw the eyes that once longed for someone to defend them. I saw the silent question I had asked 1,000 times. Why is my pain treated like it doesn't matter? I had once been the invisible child in my own home, and I had sworn my daughter would never have to be. But no matter how far I moved, how well I lived, the shadows of that past still clung to me every time I stepped foot into that old house. And I asked myself, why did I come back? Why did I bring Ava to the place I once fled from in tears? Maybe because part of me still hoped people could change. That one day my parents would realize they were wrong, would love my daughter more than they loved their pride. I was wrong. And that slap, as painful as it was, became the final awakening. Not just for Ava, but for me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just remembering the past with sadness. I was remembering it with clarity, with resolve, to stand up, to fight back, because I'm no longer the quiet little girl in the corner of the kitchen. I'm Ava's mother, and this time I will do what no one ever did for me. I will protect my child, no matter what. It took me 3 years to catch my breath after the last time I visited home, and only 3 minutes to regret coming back. Ava was only 3 back then, too little to remember much, except the cat-shaped cupcake her grandma made. But me, I remember it all. I remember the judgment in my father's eyes as I walked through the door, carrying my child without a husband beside me. I remember my mother whispering to a cousin in the kitchen, just loud enough for me to hear. Thought she married well, and now she's divorced. What a mess. I left Asheville that day with a shattered heart, and I swore I would never bring Ava back again. But this year, I broke that promise. I'm not even sure why. Maybe because my mother sent a family reunion invitation with a handwritten note. We all miss you and Ava. This year's gathering will be extra special. Maybe I was foolish for believing it. Or maybe I had held on to hope for so long that I didn't even realize I was still hoping they could change. I told Ava we were going on a magical trip to the place where Mommy grew up. She jumped with excitement. She packed her coloring book, her favorite dolls, and her Elsa dress ready to wear it at the party. We drove nearly 5 hours from Savannah to Asheville. Ava sang the entire way. I smiled, but inside I was a storm, anxious, nervous, and carrying a fragile hope that maybe this time would be different. But from the moment we stepped into the house, I knew nothing had changed. My father stood at the door, eyeing Ava from head to toe. He gave a nod, but didn't say a single word to me. My mother hugged Ava, then turned to me and smiled. You look tired. I guess being a single mom isn't easy, huh? I gave a dry smile. That wasn't comfort. It was a slap with words. That first dinner passed in awkward politeness. Ava spoke with her usual innocence, sharing stories about school, her teacher, and the little sandwich she made by herself. No one truly listened. Marcus arrived late, walking in like he'd just returned from an important business trip. He hugged our parents, patted me on the shoulder like he was doing me a favor, then leaned down and asked Ava, Still singing at the top of your lungs all day, huh, kid? Ava looked at me confused. I bit back a reply and simply squeezed her hand, changing the subject. For the next 3 days, everything I said or did was picked apart. Ava was told she was too hyper, talked too much, and didn't know how to sit still when grown-ups were speaking. I was labeled the lenient mom, the one raising a child without discipline. I realized, this time, I hadn't just returned as the daughter they never really loved. I'd come back as a mother on trial. Every move Ava made became a mirror reflecting my parenting, and in this house anything that didn't please Marcus or my parents was automatically deemed wrong. But the difference now compared to 3 years ago was that Ava was old enough to feel it. She started shrinking into herself, speaking more softly, and constantly asking me, "Did I do something wrong, Mommy?" And every time she asked, it felt like someone was tightening a fist around my heart. I started counting the days until we could leave and return to Savannah. But I never could have imagined that the final day would be the day everything exploded. The day Marcus slapped Ava. The day I finally let go of every illusion I had left about what family meant. I lost count of how many mornings I woke up early, sitting blankly on the edge of the guest bed in my old childhood room, asking myself, where did I go wrong by coming back here? My parents' 3-generation home, the one that held my entire childhood and now kept Ava under constant watch, was anything but peaceful. It felt like a giant glass jar where everyone acted polite only when someone was watching. My cousin Megan and her husband Jordan came for the reunion too, along with their 2 kids. They stayed in the room across the hall, and Jordan was filming a documentary on Southern multi-generational family life. Maybe that's why everyone tried to maintain appearances, at least while the camera was rolling. But once it turned off, the truth came out. Marcus spoke to Ava like she was a nuisance. Phrases like, "Keep it down," "Can you be quiet for a minute?" and "What kind of girl can't sit still?" echoed through meals and rest breaks. My father started retelling old family stories, always the hero, always the one who sacrificed, while I was cast as the daughter who always overreacted, and my mother, as always, never defended me. She just smiled, faintly, stirred her tea and shifted the topic to who owed money to whom in the extended family. I knew this atmosphere too well. This was the air I grew up in, where emotions were dismissed, and my pain was labeled too sensitive. But Ava wasn't used to it. Each night, she began whispering quiet questions. "Mommy, why doesn't Grandpa like me? Did I do something wrong? Why doesn't Uncle Marcus smile at me like he does with the other cousins?" I looked at her, my heart like a stone. I wanted to tell her, "It's not your fault." But how do you explain to a child that some people, even in your own family, only know how to love what feels convenient and refuse to acknowledge anything that doesn't fit their mold? I started noticing Ava retreating into herself. On the first day, she was bubbly singing, skipping down the hallway. By the third, she sat silently by the window, clutching her Elsa doll and quietly coloring. No more giggles, no more stories about school or sandwiches she made. Just silence and a cautious look in her eyes whenever someone walked into the room. I stopped sleeping. That familiar sense of helplessness, the one I thought I'd left behind years ago, came crawling back like a ghost. And I hated myself for putting my daughter in the same space that once broke me. Each night, I blamed myself. Why didn't I listen to my instincts? Jordan, my cousin's husband, noticed. One afternoon while I was clearing dishes after lunch, he came up beside me quietly and whispered, "Celeste, I've seen everything. This isn't on you. They're the ones in the wrong." I nodded, saying nothing, because if I opened my mouth, I'd cry. Then Ava started having nightmares. 2 nights in a row, she woke up in the middle of the night, trembling, whispering, "Mommy, I'm sorry. I won't sing anymore." I pulled her into my arms, tears soaking into her tiny shoulder. "No, baby. You don't have to apologize for being yourself." Something inside me was cracking. But the worst part hadn't even happened yet, and I had no idea it would come the next morning. At breakfast, in front of everyone, in the golden morning light with the smell of coffee in the air, among the very people who were supposed to love Ava the most. That morning, the Asheville sky was impossibly blue. Birds chirped from the tree outside the porch. The smell of buttered biscuits and fresh coffee filled the kitchen with a warmth that almost felt peaceful. But Ava's eyes, dry and quiet, told me something else she was holding it in. "Mommy, can I sing a little?" she whispered, while eating her pancake, still holding her tiny spoon. I hesitated. My heart tugged between encouraging my daughter to be herself or telling her to stay quiet, to stay safe in this house. I smiled gently and nodded. "If it makes you happy, then of course." And so Ava sang, softly, so gently. Just a few lines from a dream is a wish your heart makes. Her voice floated like morning breeze, pure, delicate. It softened my heart like a forgotten childhood wish. But then, Marcus set his fork and knife down. Clink. That single sound sliced through the calm like a blade. "Shut your mouth," he said, not loud, but sharp as steel. "I've said it before. This house isn't your stage. What kind of parenting is this, Celeste?" Ava froze, wide-eyed, looking at me. Before I could respond, Marcus stood up, marched over to the table, leaned down and slapped her. A hard, loud smack rang out in the dining room. Silence fell, not from shock, but from something worse, familiarity. I lunged forward. "Ava!" I screamed, pulling her into my arms as she staggered, her cheek flushed red from the blow. She didn't cry, but her tiny lips were pressed tight, trembling. "What is wrong with you?" I shouted. "She's my daughter. You had no right." Marcus shrugged. No remorse, no shame. Someone had to teach her. She needs to learn when to stay quiet. But the part that broke me most was my parents. They just sat there. No protest, no outrage. My father sipped his coffee without even looking up. "She needs to learn respect. You can't let a kid do whatever she wants." My mother sighed, shaking her head. "You got slapped too when you were little, Celeste. Remember, nobody made a scene then." I stood frozen. Ava clung to me, her small arms wrapped tightly around my waist, like she was holding on for dear life. I could feel her heart racing, frantic. I looked around that kitchen, the same room where I'd once eaten stiff, silent dinners, where I'd been the overly sensitive daughter. And now my child was becoming a mirror of my past. Hit, ignored, blamed for simply using her voice. But not this time. This time I wasn't going to stay quiet. And then I remembered. The camera. Jordan had left the camera rolling in the corner for his documentary. He gave me a small nod, quiet confirmation. It was all recorded. I lifted Ava into my arms, shielding her face with my hand. No apologies. No explanations. No goodbyes. "We're leaving," I said, my voice shaking but firm. My father didn't flinch. My mother barely glanced at me. Marcus scowled, as if he were the one wronged. I walked to the door, every step heavy as stone. I'd left this house many times before, out of sorrow, out of anger, out of disappointment, but never before to protect my child. That day I walked out, not just with Ava, but with evidence, with the truth, and with a promise I will not let this be buried in silence like everything else. I will not let anyone, even blood, lay a hand on my daughter without being held accountable. And this time I will fight, to the very end. We left that house like we were fleeing from somewhere no longer safe, but this time I wasn't running with a broken heart. I was running with clarity and with evidence. Ava curled up in my arms the entire drive back to Savannah. Her cheeks still bore the red imprint of Marcus's hand, but what haunted me more was the emptiness in her eyes, like she had just learned something twisted about her own worth. When she finally drifted off to sleep in the back seat, I pulled over. My hands were trembling, but I knew exactly who to call. "Tara, I need help," I said the moment my best friend picked up. She let me speak to the end in silence, then calmly replied, "You're not alone. Just get home. I'll take care of the rest." I met Tara through a support group for single mums in the city. She works in community justice. She's helped countless parents navigate cases of domestic abuse swept under the rug. But most importantly, Tara believes in the truth, even when it shakes the room. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Ava was still asleep, arms wrapped tightly around her Elsa doll. I sat down on the couch, opened my laptop. A few minutes later, Jordan sent over the footage with a short message. "I couldn't stay silent. You have the full recording from breakfast." I opened the file. The camera hadn't just captured the slap. It caught my parents' eyes, calm, indifferent. It caught Marcus's voice, unapologetic. And it caught mine, shaking but firm, as I carried my daughter away. I watched it 3 times. Each time my heart grew colder, then hotter. Not from pain, from anger and resolve. I couldn't let this be brushed off as just a bad family moment. I couldn't let Ava grow up believing that being hit was normal or discipline. The next morning, I took Ava to see her pediatrician, Dr. Valerie Winters. She's warm, experienced, and trained in childhood trauma. After a thorough exam, she confirmed that Ava had soft tissue damage on her cheek that could swell for a few days. But more importantly, she urged me to take Ava to a child psychologist right away. I booked an appointment with Dr. Andrea Lopez, a specialist in therapy for children exposed to family violence. After the first session, Dr. Lopez sat beside me and said, "She doesn't fully understand what happened, but she's already wondering if she did something wrong. That kind of thinking, if left unchecked, is incredibly harmful." I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect her," I said. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I pulled up the video file, trimmed it, and stitched together the clearest segments: the slap, Marcus's angry words, my parents' justifications. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. The truth was already loud enough. Then I sent the audio clip to 3 places. 1. Marcus's high school where he worked as a life skills counselor. 2. The non-profit where he volunteered supporting underprivileged kids. 3. The Young Men's Mentorship Club where he served as a role model. With it, I included a simple message: "This is how Marcus Morgan treats children." Video and testimony available if needed. I didn't feel regret. I felt lighter, like. For the first time in my life, I wasn't staying silent just to keep the peace. I knew this wasn't the end. There would be consequences. But I also knew I was no longer the child who had to bow her head during a silent dinner. I was a mother, and I had begun the fight for my daughter's safety, her dignity, and her future. I thought it would take days, maybe even weeks, but it didn't. Just 38 hours after I sent the audio recording, everything started unraveling. And this time it wasn't me or Ava who had to carry the weight. That morning, just after I dropped Ava off at school, my phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Vanessa Jenkins, principal of Crestfield High School." A woman's voice said, clear but tense, "We've received the audio recording regarding Mr. Marcus Morgan, and I want to inform you that effective immediately, he's been placed on suspension pending investigation." I was silent for a few seconds. Then I whispered, "Thank you for taking this seriously." Vanessa continued, "I've also forwarded the material to the local Board of Education. We do not tolerate any form of violence, especially toward children." That same afternoon, I received an email from the nonprofit Marcus was always bragging about at family dinners. "We regret to inform you that Marcus Morgan has been officially removed from our youth mentorship program and stripped of all platform access." Tara texted me a link. Someone had uploaded the video to a local parenting forum, sharing the story of a well-known advisor caught hitting a child in his own family. The comments section exploded. Dozens of parents chimed in, not only expressing outrage, but also sharing similar stories involving Marcus from the past. One parent wrote, I once saw him yelling at students during an after-school program, but because he had a good reputation, no one said anything. Now I get it. Another said, "My husband was one of his former students. He told me Marcus used to discipline boys with slaps. We suspected, but without proof, we stayed quiet." Social media blew up. Even though I never revealed my name, the truth had a way of walking into the light on its own. Marcus, the man who called himself a moral example, was now at the center of a storm. Photos of him in a suit handing out medals to students in school auditoriums were now shown alongside clips of him calling his own niece a nuisance. That afternoon I got a text message from someone I didn't expect, Natalie Marcus's wife. I didn't know if she had heard what happened at breakfast, but her message made me sink into my seat. "Celeste, I don't even know where to begin. But thank you. Because of you, I finally faced what I've avoided for the past 10 years. An hour later, Natalie called. "He's hit me too," she said, voice trembling. "Just, never in front of anyone." And I kept telling myself it was a one-off. But if he could do it to me, and now to his own niece, then I know for sure. It won't stop there. Natalie filed for legal separation the next day. As for my family, my mother called me. Cold voice. No empathy. "You've just humiliated this family in front of the whole town. Are you happy now?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for telling the truth. I was no longer the quiet child in the corner of the dinner table, no longer the daughter who had to swallow pain to protect the family's image. I am Ava's mother, and every step I've taken, every single one, has been to teach her this. No one has the right to hurt you without being held accountable, and no one has the right to teach you obedience through fear. I didn't think I'd ever return to that house again, not after everything that had happened. But then, it was my grandmother Elsie, now 87, who called me. She's the only person in the Morgan family who ever made me feel genuinely safe. "Celeste." Her voice was frail but firm. "I want you to come back. Just once. The whole family will be there, and I want to hear the truth from you." I stayed silent. She continued, "I let too many things go by in silence throughout my life. I don't have much time left, but I refuse to let this family continue making the same mistakes." So I went back. But this time, not with Ava. I left her with Tara. Because today wasn't about reconciliation, it was about confrontation. The living room was full. My parents, Marcus, Natalie, Megan, Jordan, a few aunts and uncles. Everyone sat still when I walked in. Grandma sat in the center, wrapped in her old knitted shawl, hands resting on her cane. She looked at me, her eyes clouded but piercing. "Tell me, Celeste," she said, "from the beginning. No interruptions, no turning away." I took a deep breath, and then I told it all. The slap. Ava's blank, hollow eyes. My parents' indifference. The recording. The drive back to Savannah. The pediatrician. The psychologist. Sending the audio file. Natalie's decision to leave Marcus. No one spoke for more than 10 minutes. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. Then Grandma spoke. Her voice was raspy, but every word landed like a bell. "I've heard the recording. Jordan sent it to me," she said. I cried. Not because Celeste brought shame to this family, but because we all let that happen right in front of us and no one said a word. And I realized this wasn't the first time. The room froze. She turned to my father, Victor. "Do you remember when you were 10 and pushed your sister down the stairs, broke her arm, then told your mother she tripped because she was clumsy? I believed you then. But what's the truth, Victor?" My father looked away, visibly shaken. The first time I'd ever seen him without words. Then Grandma turned to Marcus. "You think you're strong? No. You're so weak you had to strike a 6-year-old girl just to feel powerful. That's not what a man does. That's what a scared little boy does when he wants control." Marcus scoffed, ready to talk back, but this time Natalie cut in. "He's hit me. Twice," she said, eyes red. Each time he apologized, promised to change, and then he hit me again. I stayed silent because I thought I had to protect the family image, just like Celeste did. Then my cousin stood up. Marcus once threatened to shut off my phone for talking back. I thought I was the only one. And then another voice, and another. The truth poured out like a flood that had been held back for generations. My family, the picture-perfect Morgan legacy, was cracking wide open not because of betrayal, but because the truth had finally found its voice. My mother, the same woman who always told me to keep the peace, sat quietly, speechless. And then my grandmother gently placed her hand over mine. "I'm sorry, Celeste," she whispered, "for not seeing your pain sooner. And I know I was part of the silence too." I nodded, the tears finally coming freely, honestly. But this time, they weren't from despair. They were because, at long last, someone finally saw the truth and said it out loud. I left my grandmother's house that day with a very different heart, no longer running, no longer desperate for approval. This time, I left with clarity about my path, my boundaries, and the love I was committed to nurturing for Ava. My family, or more accurately, the ones who chose silence, may never apologize. But I've learned something. An apology isn't the only path to healing. Sometimes the act of standing up, protecting the truth, and walking away from what's toxic is the greatest forgiveness you can give yourself. After that family gathering, I did something I hadn't done in over 20 years. I set boundaries. I sent a short but firm email to all close relatives. Ava and I will no longer attend any family event where violence is excused and silence is labeled as peace. I'm not cutting ties. I'm choosing what's healthiest for my daughter and for me. The reactions were mixed. My mother sent a one-word text, "Up to you." My father didn't respond. But Megan, my cousin, wrote back with a heartfelt apology, admitting she wished she had spoken up when it mattered. Natalie let me know she was preparing divorce papers and starting therapy. And Jordan, he messaged me, "If you ever want to tell your story to help others, I'll film it for you anytime." Ava began regular therapy sessions. That first week she was quiet, mostly drawing or mumbling. But by the fourth session, she said something that made me break down in tears. "I know Uncle Marcus was wrong, and Grandma and Grandpa didn't say anything. But you stood up, Mommy, so I don't feel small anymore." I held her tight and whispered, "You always have the right to speak, Ava, and I'll always be the first to listen." Little by little, Ava began to shine again. No rush, no pressure, just real steady light, like that little voice she once sang with in that old kitchen. I returned to work different this time. Before, I was a communications coordinator for an educational nonprofit writing copy editing campaigns. But now I proposed a new project, a workshop series about emotional abuse within families, something no one wants to talk about, but too many have lived through. My boss approved it instantly, and to my surprise, the first session was packed. One mother cried while holding her child. A young woman stood and said just one sentence, "I never knew someone else went through this too. Thank you for saying it out loud." I was invited to speak at schools, then on podcasts, then on local radio. Not because I was famous, but because truth reaches the places people have buried for too long. I never named Marcus. I never specified which family. I simply told the story of a mother who once believed silence was survival, until she realized that silence was passing down the very fear she once lived in. Once, after a small conference, a 10-year-old girl walked up to me quietly and said, "Miss Celeste, I really love to sing too, but I'm not allowed to sing at home." I knelt down, took her hand, and smiled. "You have the right to sing, and you deserve someone who listens. I can't change what happened. I can't make my parents understand. I can't erase that slap from Ava's memory. But I can do one thing: turn pain into power, turn wounds into light, and turn my story into a bridge for someone else still stuck in silence." Some pain hits like a sudden storm. But healing always arrives slowly, quietly, like morning light slipping through the cracks of a window. After all the darkness, the most miraculous thing I've ever witnessed was Ava beginning to sing again, not in front of a crowd, not loudly like before, but softly, almost in a whisper, while playing with her dolls alone or humming to herself in the bathroom. At first, I didn't dare say anything. I just stood outside the doorway, smiling through tears, because I knew if I said, "I heard you singing Sweetheart" too loudly, she might shrink back again. Ava needed to feel safe on her own terms. No pressure, no spotlight, just quiet acceptance. I told Dr. Andrea, her therapist, about it. She smiled and said, "That's the first sign of her reclaiming her autonomy. She's not singing because someone encouraged her. She's singing because she wants to, and she knows she can." About a month later, I received an email from Ava's teacher, Ms. Melissa. "Hi, Celeste. Today we hosted an open classroom event. The kids could share a talent or something they love. To our surprise, Ava raised her hand and volunteered to sing. I wanted to give you a heads up. It was a very moving moment." I read the message 3 times. Ava, volunteering to sing. This was the same little girl who once wouldn't speak loudly at dinner, who flinched at heavy footsteps, who once asked me, "Did I do something bad?" for humming a tune. I took a half day off work, put on the softest cardigan I owned, and clutched a small gift, a sparkly Elsa headband, her favorite. When I arrived, the classroom was full of parents. One by one, the children went up. Some recited poems, some told stories, some danced. I sat in the back quietly, my heart pounding. And then, it was Ava's turn. She stepped onto the small platform, tiny hands gripping the microphone. She looked up at her teacher. Ms. Melissa gave her a reassuring nod. Ava took a deep breath and began, "A dream is a wish your heart makes." Her voice wasn't loud, it wasn't perfect, but it was clear, and it was beautiful. The room fell silent, and I flashed back to the day she sang that very same song in my grandmother's kitchen, before she was slapped. But now, that same song filled a safe room with no shouting, no shame, no fear. Ava's voice wasn't just music. It was a statement: I'm still here, and I've found my voice again. When the song ended, I stood without thinking. I walked straight to the front and wrapped her in my arms. She smiled and hugged me back, whispering, "Did you hear me sing, Mommy?" I nodded, unable to speak, then whispered in her ear, "I heard you, and I'm so, so proud of you." That afternoon on the way home, Ava said, "Mommy, I'm not scared to sing anymore. I know I can sing now. Even if someone doesn't like it, it's okay, as long as you hear me and I'm happy." I didn't need anything more than that. We got home. Ava sat by the window, coloring Elsa. I poured myself a cup of tea, watching the sunlight filter through the curtains, warmth settling in my chest. I used to think I needed a whole family to protect her, but now I know. One mother brave enough to stand for her child can build an entirely new world. I used to think Naomi was the kind of woman who couldn't be hurt. She was sharp, composed, always present at family gatherings with a polite smile and perfect posture. I was wrong. After everything happened, Naomi was the first to text me, short, simple, and powerful. "I heard the recording. I believe you, and I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner." I read that message nearly a dozen times, not just because of the apology, but because for the first time in years, I didn't feel completely alone in my own family. We agreed to meet at the park near my home in Savannah, on the bench beneath the old oak tree. Naomi arrived early, wearing a plain white blouse and jeans. No makeup, no heels. No longer the picture-perfect hostess from Marcus's dinner parties, but a woman who had just stepped out of an awakening. I sat down beside her. A quiet moment passed before she spoke. I knew Marcus was controlling, but I never imagined he'd raise a hand to a child. When I heard that recording, I felt complicit, for staying silent so long. I didn't know what to say at first. I just looked at her, and in Naomi's eyes I didn't see the pride of someone who once stood with the other side. I saw a woman learning how to forgive herself. He made me believe everything was my fault, she continued. He used to say I wasn't strong enough to be a mother, not good enough to represent the Child Welfare Board, and slowly I stopped believing in my own worth. She clenched her hands. When he slapped Ava, I didn't just see violence. I saw me sitting in that kitchen being told I was a loudmouth who didn't know her place. I've been there, and I know what Ava felt. I turned to her, tears welling in my eyes. Naomi, I know you tried. I don't blame you. She let out a soft laugh, a sad but freeing kind of laugh. I don't need forgiveness, she said. I just want you to know, from now on, I won't stay silent again. Naomi told me she's working with a lawyer to finalize her legal separation, and that she had stepped down from the Child Welfare Board, where Marcus once served as an advisor. I don't want another child being guided by a man like that. She also shared something that pierced my heart. Her own daughter Camilla, just 10 years old, had often said she was afraid of her dad. I didn't listen enough, but I will now. We sat quietly for a long time after that. No more words needed. We had said enough. Through honesty shared pain, and a kind of understanding that doesn't need to be explained. As the sun began to set, Naomi turned to me and said, I don't think we were ever close. But now, if you ever need someone to watch Ava, or just someone to listen, I'm here. I nodded, and if Camilla ever wants to sing or draw and needs a safe space, you send her to my house. She smiled. A real smile, one I'd never seen from Naomi before. I left the park that day feeling lighter than I had in years, not because everything was fixed, but because I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Two women once on opposite sides of a broken family, now standing side by side, protecting our children, protecting the truth, and protecting each other. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I sent out a small handwritten invitation with a simple note attached. Thank you for believing me when others stayed silent. I don't have much, but I have a front porch wide enough for safe hearts. Join us for tea and a little song. Love, Celeste and Ava. I didn't call it a party. I didn't even use the word family in the traditional sense. I just called it a gathering of those who chose love over judgment. That day my little house was filled with light. I strung fairy lights along the fence, laid a lavender print tablecloth, and placed a jar of wildflowers Ava had picked at the park. Jordan, my cousin's husband, brought his mini camera, not to make a film, but to gift the footage to Ava one day. Naomi arrived with Camilla wearing matching floral dresses and carrying a box of homemade cookies. Ms. Melissa, Ava's teacher, brought a comic book Ava loved. Even Dr. Andrea, her therapist, showed up, wearing a soft pink sweater instead of her usual blazer. It was the first time I saw her as a person, not just a professional. Everyone brought something, not in material gifts, but in presence. When we were all seated in a circle on the lawn, I stood raising my cup of chamomile tea. I don't have any relatives here today, but I do have people who saw me, and Ava with eyes full of kindness. And for me, that's more than enough to call this a new family. No one clapped, but their eyes sparkled, and Naomi gave a small nod, as if to say, me too. Ava sat on a small chair in the middle of the yard. She wore a white dress, held a toy microphone in her tiny hands, her cheeks blushing, but her eyes were bright. She turned to me. Mum, can I sing that song? I nodded. And she began, a dream is a wish your heart makes. This time, there was no trembling, no glances around to see who was watching. Just a little girl singing with her whole heart, surrounded by people who were truly listening. I sat beside Naomi, gently holding her hand. Camilla whispered, Ava sings way better here than at school. When the song ended, everyone clapped. Not loudly, but just enough for Ava to beam, step down, and run into my arms. Mommy, I'm not scared anymore, she whispered. I leaned into her ear, because you're standing in a circle of people who love you, Ava. and because you know you have the right to sing anytime you want. After the gathering, as I stood in the kitchen rinsing teacups, Naomi came in beside me. She picked up a towel and started drying. Then softly, she said, "You know, today Camilla told me, 'Mom, I want to come back here again.' Thank you for creating a place like this." I smiled, whispering, "I can't change everything, but I can start with Ava, and with any child who walks into this home." The afternoon ended with hugs, promises of next Sunday, and a basket of cookies to take home. I stood at the door watching the cars drive away, the sunset casting a golden glow through the trees. And I knew I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. Not from my old family, not from my parents, not even an apology from Marcus, because I had built a different legacy, one made from choice, from voice, and from unconditional love. I'm not just a survivor, I'm a mother. I'm a light keeper for those who were once afraid of the dark in their own homes. And if anyone asks, what is family? I'll smile and say, it's where your child dares to sing out loud and knows someone will clap